Welcome to another Bruce Starr Show. I'm really, really excited to have on this guest. You know, some of you don't know that I spent 10 years out in Los Angeles. You know me for a lot of other things, but you may not know that I've spent 10 years out in Los Angeles. And I did that originally as a stand-up comedian. I won't say the year, but it was 1981. That's a lot of years ago. And it was such an exciting time in my life, by far the most exciting times in my life, because I had a chance to meet some of what they now call the golden age of comedy and comedians. I hung out at the Improv almost every night. I had a roommate who wrote for all the stand-up comedians, and we'll talk about him and we'll mention him in a little bit. And at one time, I represented 35 stand-up comedians. And I'm almost sure, Joey, I remember having your picture as someone who was one of my clients, even though we didn't really know each other. I was a improv guy, and you were a comedy store guy.
Comedy store guy.
I loved being out there. I loved dealing with the comedians. I learned so much about life and show business and comedy. I was a personal appearance agent, and it was great fun. And I would like to bring on right now my very, very special guest, who I did not really know all that well when I was out there, but we've gotten to know each other in the last week or so, and we've had some great times on the phone together talking about the golden age of comedy and how that all came about. Joey Camen, welcome to the show. It's great to finally have you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've been working on this for a week or so. We won't say why.
Yeah.
But we've been working at this, and in our trials and tribulations, we've probably been on this broadcast without broadcasting it for about an hour. We've been talking to each other.
Just one word: technology.
It's really unbelievable. Joey, of course, is in Los Angeles in the Hollywood area, and I'm down here in South Florida. So, Joey, tell me about how you became the Joey that went out to Los Angeles. How does that happen? How does someone from Detroit make up his mind and say, I'm out of here, I'm going to the big city to see what I could do with my career?
Well, dysfunction helps, okay? Like a lot of comedians, they come from highly dysfunctional families. I was in a very abusive home, strange siblings and parents and all that stuff. And at 15, I made a decision to get the heck out of Detroit. And I lived in Detroit. I lived in rough neighborhoods. I'm not a suburban kid. I was a Detroit street kid, a little white boy, little Jewish boy growing up in black neighborhoods. And that's the issue with my book here, Laughing Through the Pain, that I just wrote, that Bruce was kind enough to read and have me on here.
I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. If you put part 2 together, I'd be glued to that also.
And it's called Laughing Through the Pain, Stories from the Trenches of Hollywood Stand-Up Comedy and Beyond. It's on Amazon and on Goodreads. And the way I did was I talk about in my book, the first half is my dysfunctional family living in Detroit and what caused me to who makes a plan at 15 to move all the way from Detroit to Hollywood without knowing anyone. I mean, a dysfunctional home. I mean, look, other people have had rougher times, but it was my rough time. And I was a funny kid. And I ended up going out to the Comedy Store in Hollywood and auditioning for Mitzi. And at the time, it was a small little room on the Sunset Strip. It wasn't as famous as it is today. And she liked me. And I did good with the audience. I was just like a ballsy teenager. And after 4 times of being on stage in my entire life, I was asked to be a regular performer at the Comedy Store, performing along some of they weren't that well known then, but some big names. And it was a lot of fun. And it just kept going on from there. That's how
Joe, give me 30 seconds or a minute of what what she liked about you. What give me a little bit of the material that you had back then.
Well, Mitzi liked the fact that I was this little kid. Well, actually, I talked to her on the phone. I was really a ballsy kid. I don't know where it came from. I was a ballsy teenager. I had read about the Comedy Store in Playboy magazine. I'm not supposed to be even looking at Playboy. There was in the After Hours column, and it talked about the Comedy Store. So I called up Mitzi Shore, who was the owner. She got it in a divorce from her husband, Sammy. Turns out she lived 2 blocks from me in Detroit at one time. I lived on Ward Street. She lived on Littlefield. Wow. So we bonded that. And then what she liked about me is I did voices. I did crazy voices from characters in my neighborhood. Like I would talk about the black people in my neighborhood, and things like that. And this voice like here was coming out of the face of a 17-year-old who looked 14. And the audience would go nuts. And I was just doing, I can't remember my act from when I was 17, but I would just do characters from my neighborhood, talk about the family. That's what, a 17-year-old talks about. You can't make up what you don't know. I mean, you could, but it'd be a little crazy. And she liked what I was doing on the stage. And I was asked to, and I had been writing since I was like 14, 15, writing comedy routines and putting them together at a young age and just going up on stage in front of people. It was like, I don't know. I was just my brain was off a little bit because it's not normal for a kid to do that or want to do that. And I just, you're kind of, you don't know any better. They say stand up is one of the hardest things to do. And supposedly I didn't know that. Supposedly I did the hardest thing first. So everything else was a little bit easier.
So I know what goes on, the backstage for the Comedy Store is that little alleyway in the back there.
Yeah.
So you obviously found yourself standing around guys that are now icons, and
When I was 18, I first met Richard Pryor, and first time Richard saw him, I talk about this in the book. First time Richard saw me, I was on stage doing my black voices and stuff, which the audience loved. And by the way, the Comedy Store was and still is one of the whitest owned clubs that had more black comedians and more black audiences than anywhere. Mitzi was doing that, promoting black acts and promoting to the black community before any club owners were doing that, so Richard Pryor watched me on stage and I was getting laughs, and he was sitting back there with Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney is a very famous, Paul was Richard's writer, and he was a fellow performer, and we were friends. And I was on stage doing my black voices, and Richard Pryor was getting really, really mad. He turned to Paul and said, "Who is this mother effer Al Jolson's son?" Referring to Al Jolson, who wore blackface. And he really wanted to beat me up. And Paul calmed him down and told, I was 18 years old. I was a little, I was a kid. He wanted to kick my butt, So Paul calmed and said, "No, that's Joey. He's cool. And then he introduced me to him, and he was actually very nice. And we ended up not becoming friends, but acquaintances. And he put me on the Richard Pryor Show, which was in 1977. I was 20 then. And he ended up putting me on the show. And he was very complimentary and everything after that. But, what got me was it's okay for him to go up on stage and, do his impressions of white people. And here's this white kid doing accurate impressions of black people. And the audiences loved it. It wasn't derogatory or making fun. It was just coming from my background, and he got mad. And that became my nickname for years at the Comedy Store, was Al Jolson's son. And Mitzi used to even call me Al Jolson's son, because it was such a funny comment that people would say that to me. Because
so who else was back there, in those days?
That people would know. One of the first people who befriended me was Steve Landesberg, who was on Barney Miller. He played Detective Dietrich. He was their nicest guy, really nice guy. Who else back then? Robin Williams didn't come to I think 1977, around the same time. That's when he came there. Charles Flesher was there. Tom Dreesen, great guy, he was there. Who's still performing all over the country. Oh my God, there's a list of names. I'd have to look in the book. You
saw David Letterman before he was David Letterman, and Jay Leno before he was Jay Leno.
Exactly. David Letterman was there. He was a weatherman from Indiana. It just came out. And, in fact, what's really interesting now is he's wearing a beard. because he's retired. It's like when he first came out, he had a big beard. He was, I guess it must have been his late 20s, but he had a beard. So he had a big, thick beard. And he used to wear these big striped shirts, like a blue and yellow shirts. And he told morbid jokes, but he was very funny, David. But he always made me laugh. He was kind of off, in terms of a person talking to him, he was kind of standoffish, a little odd, which we all are. And but he always made me laugh, David. He always made me laugh. His stand-up was nothing like what you would think it was by watching the show that he had, his talk show. His stand-up, those were all jokes written by his writers and stuff, and him. But it was morbid jokes. They were just, I always found them very, very funny.
You mentioned Steve Landsberg. Did you know Rick Bernstein?
That was his manager. I would just say hello to him. I really didn't know him very well.
He was my buddy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was a nice guy. I remember he had the chin beard. He always had the chin beard, right?
He passed on at years after I went back, and I went to see him, and he got ill. He left the world here.
Yeah, I know. He had a house up in the hills off of Mulholland. I remember going to a party there once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah. There's so many names from the past. There's so many people I came across. You have to realize I was at the Comedy Store for like 27 years working. I still look young, but I worked there. My point of view is from a kid, who was there. It's not normal to do that, have that kind of life at such a young age. I did graduate high school, by the way, a year early, and right after high school, I came out to California at 17. I was a year ahead of myself. So I was no dummy.
so my connection with you guys really started when I became roommates with a fellow named Barry Martyr.
Oh yes, Barry. I knew Barry. Barry, yeah, very funny guy. You said he was your roommate. Yeah, you just told me that. Barry used to make me laugh. Oh my God, that guy was so darn funny. Just his normal personality. He would just say the craziest stuff just by looking at people. I was telling Bruce this earlier. I remember we're driving in his car down Hollywood Boulevard, and there's some strange guy carrying these shopping bags, and Barry would in this weird New York. Hey, that guy looks like, I bet he cut up his parents in that bag. And his parents are in that bag. Just the way he would say it. It's like insane, but the way his delivery was just making me. I just started laughing out loud. And once you started laughing with Barry, he would go on and on and on because you were his private audience. It's like some comedians are like that.
Yeah, and I used to travel the country with him, and we used to go out on the road with Murray, and we used to go with Roger and Roger. Used to have a great time. We used to go to Phoenix and to Dallas, and it was, I had some of the most fun times that I remember.
Oh yeah, the Comedy Store back then, it was different. It's the level of comedy was much higher than there is today. We're talking Robin Williams, Richard Pryor, Jay Leno, Paul Mooney. These guys are legends, and people have some of them are doing impressions of them, and that's their act. And the younger audiences don't know it because they don't study comedy. It's not their. They just see what they see. You know what I mean? But Jay Leno, very nice guy, always I got to talk about him in my book. I always liked Jay. Just a funny guy and a nice man. No matter what you hear about the press and all that stuff, and his rivalry with Letterman and all that stuff. The bottom line was back then, David Letterman idolized Jay Leno. It was his idol. He just wanted to be Jay Leno. He just loved. Jay was the best. He could do 90 minutes on stage, making it look so easy, and it's so hard to do. It's like a good actor who you effortlessly on film, you go, wow, he's fantastic. He makes it look easy. And Jay made it look easy. And he was just great. He was just great. He was one of the best performers on stage back then. Yeah.
There's a reason why they called him the hardest working comedian in the business, because he would work the store and get on his motorcycle and get down the hill to the Improv almost every night when he was in town.
Yeah, and he worked the college circuit, and he was working, all these colleges every year. When he was doing circuits, no one was doing. He'd go everywhere. He was just And he was funny and he was nice. I mean, because there's some comedians, I might like their act, but I don't like them as a person, and vice versa. I don't like their act, but I like them as a person. But the public doesn't get to see that, you know? So it was always very interesting for me to be around these people. And, you know, I didn't become a household name like them. I mean, I did the talk shows and stuff, but, you know, I took a different path, you know, and now I currently do voiceover, mostly for, you know, video games, cartoons, ADR, which is called audio dialogue replacement, which is for movies. Like you put in the voices for like people sitting in a movie, and, you know, and crowd noises and stuff. It's actually a real lot of fun.
And I'm so thrilled that, you know, you're still working. I know a lot of the guys, boy, I see them still kind of, some of them struggling along, and thank God a lot of them have made it. Of course, you know, one of my biggest clients back then was a guy from the Comedy Store that used to throw talcum powder in his face.
What's his name?
His name was Howie Mandel.
Oh, Howie Mandel. Oh, yeah, Howie Mandel's doing very well. Yeah.
He did whiteface. He used to throw talcum powder in his face until he realized it was probably close to killing him.
Well, yeah, well, you can't do that now because everything is considered racist, right? You know, the politically correct world of comedy, you can't do, you know, a lot of things, you know, but that's crazy and that's insane and that's not good for comedy, because you should be able to say what you want and have fun with it. And if people can't take a joke, just, you know, turn it off. Don't, now social media, you write about it.
And so tell me a little bit about what it was like to, you know, after you got past that fourth show, which is amazing. It's incredible. You know, 99 out of 100 other comedians will not have that same story to tell. Tell me about what life was like after that.
Well, you know, you would just work like every night. You know, in the first couple of years, I worked like with me and Paul Mooney, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I was trained with like learning to talk to the audience, which most people don't do. They just get a big crowd. So if they get heckled, they don't know what to do. They have one line to, you know, shut them up. I had to learn how to, so, you know, if you could make them laugh at 1 in the morning after they saw 15 top guys, you knew you were doing something right. And I would. So, I mean, you know, because those are the hardcore comedy fans. They're sitting at the end. Can you imagine from 8 to 1, they're still sitting there watching comedy? If you can make those 15, 20 people that are sitting in the crowd that have watched 5, 6 hours of comedy, you're doing something right. You're doing all right. You should be proud of yourself. And I was, you know, so that's what that was like the first couple of years. And, you know, it was just a job. You'd go to work, you know, I mean, see, the Comedy Store has its good and its bad because it's a showcase club. You can't do a full half hour. I mean, you could if you were famous, but if you were just working as one of the guys, you'd only get like a 15-minute spot. Or like, but Paul Mooney, he'd get to do like a half hour at the end. She just let him go till the end. They shut the club down, you know. So it was a good training ground. It was a really good training ground. And I don't know how it is there now. I mean, I think it's not pretty much the same. You know, if you have clout, you can go on and do whatever you want. You bump everybody, which is not good, you know. But it's a showcase club. It's not in most comedy clubs, it's an opening act, a middle, who does like 10, 15 minutes. Then you got the middle act does 20, 30, and then the headliner does, you know, 45 to an hour. And that's not what the Comedy Store is. The Comedy Store is a list of 15, 20 comedians who do 10, 15 minutes each. And that's it. So, I mean, some people can do 15 minutes, but ask them to do an hour, they can't do it, you know.
So they wouldn't be headliners then.
No, but they would get headliner jobs and they'd have to struggle, you know.
Yeah. Right. So, you know, when I was more of an improv guy. I mean, I went to the Comedy Store plenty of nights, but I was much more of an improv guy, which is why we didn't really get to know each other that much, because it's really funny. Maybe we could talk about that. Other than Leno, and maybe you could mention 1 or 2 other people, the comedians did not mix. If you worked the store, you were not on Bud's list. And if you worked the Improv, you were not on Mitzi's list.
Right. Well, the one reason Jay Leno could work both was, even before he was famous, was because, you know, he was good. And also the fact that Bud Friedman used to manage him at one point. He was his manager at one point. In fact, Jay had the funniest joke. He used to say, Bud Friedman wants to have me assassinated so he can release an album, Jay Leno, The Early Years. Talking about how cold-blooded Bud Friedman was. He used to say jokes like, he's very funny. But
Bud's writing a book now, or has written a book.
Yeah, Bud has a book out. Bud has a book out about the improvisation, from the 60s all the way up till now, because I think he still owns it. I'm not really sure. I didn't really, but the improv, it was a different set of comedians. So, I mean, I don't really know anybody else that worked both, unless you became so famous. Then Robin Williams could do it. It had to do with fame and money, not necessarily talent, even though those guys are talented. But, if you wanted to work both rooms, it was more about the club owners and the comedians, they wanted to control stuff, but it's just like any corporate thing, So
you talked about the comedians coming on and kind of doing certain comedians being able to do what they want. Robin, I remember seeing Robin come in, walk right through the crowds, and he'd get on next and carry on for half an hour. Fantastic. And one of the things I really remember was when Billy Crystal was getting ready for his first Saturday night gig.
Yeah.
And he came to the Improv almost every night for a few weeks working out his characters.
Yeah, he worked at the Comedy Store too. But see, he had the management. See, he was managed, Mitzi kissed all their butts. Mitzi, they were powerful management. Rollins Joffe managed Robin Williams. He managed Woody Allen from day one. They had David Letterman and Billy Crystal. So you cannot say no to that management. So those guys could work wherever they want, anytime they want, because all the big agents came to see him. They have heads of their agent, William Morris agency. Now it's called William Morris Endeavor, would come. They'd be sitting in the back. The heads of the departments would be there to see Billy Crystal and that kind of thing. And Eddie Murphy used to come in there, perform a lot too. He was a Comedy Store guy. He worked out some of his stuff on the road for the albums, that kind of stuff. So you'd see all this stuff. And one of the great highlights of being there was getting to see Richard Pryor and talk to him. Richard Pryor, I must have seen at least a couple hundred shows of his. I watched him work out material for all those great albums from the 70s. Richard Pryor and the Sunset Strip and all these different. And it would be fascinating to see him do a little routine and then tweak it night after night. And the place would be packed, packed. And I don't really think he got any money for doing that. I mean, Mitzi was making out like a bandit, but maybe she gave him a little something, but I don't really think so. He was there to work on his craft. He was a master, Richard Pryor. It was fun to watch him. It was just, fun to watch him.
So let's talk about that, because that was one of the most controversial things in the comedy world out in Los Angeles. While right before I got there was the comedian strike.
The comedy strike. Yeah, I was there for the strike. And Mitzi was
let's tell the people what that was about.
That was about we didn't get paid. Okay, you're working for free. She's making out like a bandit, charging cover charge, but getting drinks. You know how much a drink even cost back in the 70s? $4 or $5. And she was making all the money off the liquor, the cover charge, and she served finger food. And I can't afford to pay the comedians because it's a college. Yeah, well, we're the professors, lady. I mean, it was just insane. So the comedians struck. And eventually we did get paid, but not very much. I think it was like $15, $20 a set. So, and you know what? I put this in the book, but Mitzi, I know for a fact, back in those days, spent $500,000 because of her righteousness. $500,000, like in 1979. So she didn't have to pay the comedians and lawyers' fees and all this other stuff. $500,000. How insane. And Bud Friedman was smart. He just said, okay, I'm going to pay you guys. Didn't spend any money. Just gave them the token money that they wanted. Bud Friedman was a good businessman. He just said, I'll pay him. I'm not gonna have that crazy strike in front of my place and, pissing off all these comedians that can help me later on. You know what I mean? So he just said, okay, you want $20 a set? Here you go. Or whatever it was. I didn't know what they paid.
I think it was 15.
$15, yeah. But see, what the public didn't know was they are going on the Sunset Strip at the famous Comedy Store, watching all these top comedians, people that are on the Tonight Show, and these guys are getting, bupkas a night. They thought they're being paid a lot of money because they're in this famous club. You know, you'd go on a trip, say you'd come from New York or Detroit or whatever, and you with your family, and you go see these comedians on the Sunset Strip, and you think, oh, wow, these must be making a fortune. You know, they're on the Tonight Show. Forget it, the owner's making all the money. But, you know, that was the was. You accepted it because, you know, it was a good place to perform, great room, fun, you know, you'd hang out with fun guys, and it was just, it was a different time. And I really did have a lot of fun.
I'm sure I did too as an agent. I mean, it couldn't have been any more exciting, especially I got out there in 81. And I think right at 81, the evening at the Improvs hit real big all around the country, all around the world.
Yeah, that TV show. Yeah, I never did the evening Improv. I never did. I did other shows. I did other shows like dating myself here, of course, but like the Dinah Shore show, I did that a couple of times, which is like, actually it was harder to get on that show than it was the Tonight Show. But the booker really liked me and Dinah liked me. And it wasn't like the Tonight Show where they had Johnny had to tell you to come over to sit down. You sat down and you talked to Dinah. And she was just the nicest lady, just like you saw her. In fact, I was doing a television series that I was in called The Righteous Apples on the same lot. And she actually remembered me. She said, hi, Joey. She'd say hello to me on the lot. Dinah.
Wow.
You know, she was really one of the nicest people. You know, they have the Dinah Shore golf tournament every year and everything. She was just like, you know, a really nice person, you know, in show business, which is not necessarily rare, but it can be sometimes.
So we're going to talk about, I want you to show your book. People to read this book.
Here we go. Laughing Through the Pain, Stories from the Trenches of Hollywood Stand-Up Comedy and Beyond. Hey, I look the same age, right? Yeah.
Yes, perfectly, just like him, yes. So and where can they find the book?
You can find it on Amazon, Amazon.com. Do a search for Joey Camen, Camen, or Laughing Through the Pain. There's only one book with that title, I believe. And also you can get it on Goodreads. Goodreads is a great website. I mean, I don't know, there's like 20 million people on there. Anybody that reads books will know what Goodreads is. And I'm getting good reviews on both sites. And Goodreads I really like a lot too, because they're average readers. And, you know, not that everybody's not an average reader, but, you know, it's just a general public. I mean, I have a couple reviews from friends on Amazon, but, you know, they knew me. But when someone who didn't know my story at all and read it and gave me a good review, you know, that feels really, really good, you know.
A couple more things I want to ask. We'll save at the end. I know you've got ambitions to produce a movie. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, being a comedian, being on the road, that must have been a lot of fun. And I'd like to hear just some of the stories that you remember of going on the road and what happened after you got off stage, even if it was at the Comedy Store.
Well, being on the road, you know, I only did it for a few years. It depends where you went. See, in the whole spectrum of show business and comedians, there's very few comedians, even to this day, that can put butts in the seats. So, you know, those are like the Kevin Hart nowadays, or Chris Rock, or they can fill stadiums. But there's a whole spectrum of comedians that have to work in these small clubs that are like 300 seats, 200 seats, 400 seats, and they might be able to fill those maybe. So it's not as luxurious as if you work in a stadium one night taking a ton of cash home. So, I mean, it has ups and downs. I mean, you're playing to audiences that are different than California or a New York audience and that kind of thing. But, you know, you got to work on your craft and you got to do, you know, 45 minutes to an hour. I always headlined. And you take some cash home and you meet some fun people. But afterwards, I mean, you really have to fill 23 hours, you know, of your time. So, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, you can write and people watch TV. You just do what most people do in their leisure time. It's a weird life. It's a weird life. I just remember having to deal with comedians that I didn't know because they give you like an apartment or a condo. And you're the headliner, and they make the middle act and sometimes the opening act. Some strangers come in there, and you gotta share your apartment with them, you know. And I'm a vegetarian and a vegan, and I was starting my vegetarianism back then in the '80s, and I was like, all right, this guy touches my food, I'm gonna kill him, So I would be like kind of mean, not mean, but sort of mean, because I said, do not touch my food. You can't smoke in here. You cannot smoke, So I'd lay down these ground rules, I'm like, and they respected me because I was the guy from California in the Comedy Store, So I'm like, all right, none of this is going to go on in here, or, because all I had to do was say something to the club owner. They were gone. That's how mean they were. The club owners were cool. If you were from California and you worked at the Comedy Store, you had a reputation, or you've been on some TV shows, it's not very nice to be a middle actor, an opening act in some of these small clubs. It's a really, really rough life. Really rough life. You're at the whim of these club owners who can let you go in a heartbeat, or the headliner could be jerk and just say, I don't want that guy here, and you're gone. There's no contract to protect you. So it's a sad life. It's a hard life, but it's also fun because you're enjoying what you're doing. And most people should enjoy what they do for their work.
And I remember being the personal appearance agent for so many of the comedians, and it was a love-hate thing also, because, like you said, they liked being out of town. They liked having that adoration by people that normally wouldn't get to see, people from television, stars, whatever. But it was also, the part that wasn't great was you couldn't be in LA for auditions.
Exactly. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Oh, that was always.
Yeah. That I didn't like either. Because if I had to audition for something, or even a voiceover job for a cartoon series or something, oh, he's in Texas. If you would have got the job, pay way more than that comedy gig. Yeah, and long term. So yeah, that was a frustrating thing, but hey, what can I say? No regrets.
And I got to tell you that, like you said, you're not one of the household words, but you're a very funny guy, and you've come a long way, and just about everybody in the comedy world, and knew them right from the beginning. And that's unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, I was just there at the time, and it's like, I didn't think the Comedy Store was, which sounds weird, these comedians would come from other parts of the country, and they were, kissing Mitzi's butt, and I kind of took it all I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. Because, I started there as a kid. Hey, this is what I do. I work here. I was like, I wasn't making much money there. No one made any money there. But I was like, but everybody thought it was the most prestigious crown jewel and this and that, and everybody has their dreams. And, I just kind of took it for granted, which I don't know if that was good or bad, but that's the way I was back then, and Jim Carrey came through there. He was another great guy. He was a very nice guy. Jim Carrey is very funny, very talented. And most people don't know this. He started out doing singing impressions that were phenomenal. Wow. Phenomenal. He would do Ray Charles, and you would think Ray Charles was in the room.
Wow.
Jim Carrey is one of the best comedic impressionists. People don't know that. As singing
Jim Carrey, right? You said Jim Carrey. You said Drew. Yeah. Drew, and who did you mean, Jim or Drew? You said Drew.
No, I didn't say Jim.
Jim, exactly. I saw him in the old days on the Improv. When he remember when he did Sammy? We did Sammy Davis. He'd take his eye, and one eye would go this way, and he'd do a perfect Sammy.
Yeah. Jim Carrey was an incredible impressionist, and just a nice guy too, Canadian. So he was just Jim was a lot of fun. He was a good person.
You knew he was going to be. You knew he was going to be there. He was going to be a top guy.
Yeah, he was going to be a star. He was just so talented, but his act. Then he changed his act. He dropped all the impressions and started doing all this weird stuff, and that's when he took off. When he completely did a 180 on his act. He did, because everybody does the same act forever, it seems. He was very smart and changed it up, and he just took off. He was just so talented and very nice too. As I said before, some comedians aren't nice off stage. Yeah,
I've been around enough. One of my friends was hung out with Bruce Smirnoff, and I mentioned a name to you, Goldstein, and you knew Goldstein.
Oh my God, yeah, but the public don't know who Mark Goldstein. There's a lot of characters throughout anybody that works in any business, there's always like these characters, these fringe characters and whatnot at your work or whatever. And in our work, it was this guy named Mark Goldstein who was just so funny. He was a real New York character. Hey, how you guys doing? Hey, get away from me. He was a real neurotic Jewish guy, you know. But he was just so fun. You can't tell any of his jokes because it was just his persona. You know, you just walk next to him and he just like make you laugh, you know. And we were all friends and that kind of thing, you know. I
can actually call Mark. Unfortunately, he passed on years ago now. And you know, Bruce Smirnoff. We hung out together. I was the agent, and you know, Bruce was the stand-up, and Goldstein was the character actor, and we and Barry Martyr. You know, Barry went on to work very closely with Seinfeld, and they worked very closely on the B movie. And as a matter of fact, the name of the main character in the B movie is Barry.
Oh wow, I never saw it, but I didn't know that. That's very funny. Yeah, Barry Martyr is hilarious. Because I always worry about the audience because the audience don't know who we're talking about. So it's like, hey, who are they talking about? Is it an inside joke we're listening to?
Now it's a little inside. It's a little inside. But the last thing I want you to talk about is, perhaps the one level that you've been anticipating and really wanting to get into is production.
Right. I've been writing screenplays actually since I'm 20, but I've written a dozen of them, had some optioned, and in the world of Hollywood, you could write. There are people that make a living writing screenplays, making fortunes, and nothing gets produced. Can you believe that? You write your butt off every day. Your scripts get bought, but you make a lot of money, but you're frustrated because nothing comes out. And there are the people in therapy over this. It's not about the money. It's about that, your work is not put out there in the world. And, I've just been working on one project for the last few years. I've been trying to get made and had different actors attached to. It's called John Ledger. It's about a sex addict and his life and coping. The way I promote it is in terms of production and trying to get it financed and all that kind of thing. It's in the vein of Leaving Las Vegas, but the drug of choice is sex, as opposed to alcohol, which is a huge problem in our society. And I'm talking very serious here, even though it's a comedic show, because comedians, most of them are very, very serious people when you talk to them outside of them being on TV or they're very serious, because in order, you have the yin and the yang. In order to know the funny, you have to know the sad. And it's a serious drama that I wrote, and people seem to like it. It's just a matter of having the elements fall in. And getting the money is the main thing.
If you can get some of the more serious names attached to it, as you might be able to do, that's certainly going to help you. Yeah, yes. But that's just the way it is in show business. It could take 1 year, it could take 5 years, it could happen in overnight. It could happen in a couple of months. It just takes time. A lot of projects we see have taken 20 years to come to the screen. So, it's just it's a different kind of business, It's a different kind of business. Well, Joey, this has been great. I enjoy this very, very much. Just being able to talk about the days where I worked out there and with someone who's so, entrenched in the middle of it. This has been great. I hope the folks watching this will enjoy a truly inside look to show business, the world of comedy, and now an author laughing through the pain. I loved your book. It's a truly inside look at show business, at comedy, at comedians, at these great people. So I don't know why that's ringing, but I'm going to say goodbye. Joey, thank you so much for doing the show, and let's do another one again soon. Thank you, Bruce Starr. Thank you for having me. Take care. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.